table. This table is going to be presented by Will Fedway, Vice President of Industry and Government Affairs in Virginia Maritime Association, where he develops and implements new maritime-related business initiatives and regulatory strategies to promote, protect, and encourage international and domestic commerce through Virginia's port. Well, welcome, and Will, you're on stage, my dear.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me, and a big thanks to Chango for partnering on this event. We're very happy to be part of this. So again, we're joining us today for our cybersecurity panel as part of this Light 21 Logistics and Technology event. My name is Will Fadu, and I'm the Vice President at the Virginia Maritime Association, which is Virginia's premier maritime and supply chain trade association, representing over 450 member companies in the maritime and supply chain space. And we really exist to protect, promote, and encourage commerce through Virginia's port. We've been doing that for about 100 years, but you can learn more about us at vamaritime.com. So on this panel today, we're going to be discussing the role that cybersecurity plays in the supply chain and logistics space. Today, we've heard a lot of outstanding technological applications through blockchain, IoT, and AI, and how they're transforming the supply chain. But how do we secure these technological breakthroughs? With digital transformation is really leading to rapid growth in attack surface areas. When you think about the transportation and logistics industry, for example, when you think of transitioning to and dependence on IoT, is not being matched by equivalent attention to cybersecurity, creating gaps. So where's the immediate threat? And is our workforce prepared to meet these type of threats? So today our expert panelists are Kevin Esser with G2 Ops, Daniel Fario with Oero Inc., and Pina Melchiona with Canadian Institute of Traffic and Transportation. Thank you each for joining us today for this conversation. We're very excited to have you with us. And each of our panelists are going to have 5 minutes to present how their organizations are bolstering the security of these new industries and defending the supply chain, and followed by a panel discussion. So our first speaker today is Kevin Esser, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Business Officer of G2 Ops. As a founding partner of G2 Ops, Kevin manages the delivery of G2 Ops' portfolio of security engineering, cybersecurity, systems engineering, and model-based systems engineering services to its national security partners. He also works directly with G2 Ops' client base to ensure service delivery is collaborative and grounded in a culture that facilitates innovation and creativity. His broad skill set includes delivery of cybersecurity solutions within challenging tactical environments, the application of model-based systems engineering to complex systems, and addressing cyber and security risk challenges within the greater maritime ecosystem. Without much further ado, Kevin, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction, Will. I want to thank Chango and the other sponsors of the Light conference today. And I want to say to the other panelists, I've really enjoyed the conversations today. Very enlightening. I just want to start out by saying that I think one of the cybersecurity is often the last to the table. And so I think it's ironic that we're the last panel today. And often it's seen as a barrier to entry into new capability. You know, we're the drag in the machine that's adding cost, you know, perhaps jeopardizing revenue, you know, kind of taking away the ability of the organization to perform its mission. And I want to try to change that a little bit today with my comments. I want to talk about resiliency. So if we think about cybersecurity properly, what we're really doing is providing a way for the organization to really achieve its mission and make that mission resilient against attack, you know, both from within the organization and from without. And so I want to change the conversation and have people start thinking about security as a part of how they make their operations resilient and actually preserve revenue, maybe even drive up revenue. And so I think one of the things that's important for us to talk about also is the concept of the threat landscape. You know, frequently I think we don't think about the landscape of threat and what that means to the environment. In 2013, the Defense Science Board put together a way to think about threats in a series of tiers. And the thought was tier one is your least capable threat. Tier 6 is your most capable. And Tier 1 is acting on just environments, vulnerabilities that exist in the marketplace today. Tier 6 is a nation state that's that's able to create new capability, new attacks, and then go affect those. And so in 2013, when that came out, I think that was very insightful. But only 8 years later, I think it's a little bit obsolete. And I think it's important for this group to think about the fact that because of the existence of the black market in malware, because of the dark web, because of the compromises in nation state capability that have hit that marketplace, all tiers are now active. Nation state level capability, threat capability are things that can be activated against our systems today. And so I think that's an important concept to think about. So we're not just worried about the script kiddie, we're also worried about nation state level capabilities working against our systems. And so what that means is whether an attacker is looking at our system to take advantage of, to exfiltrate our intellectual property, to exfiltrate data, disrupt our service, wants to levy a ransomware threat against us, or they simply want to place something on our systems that will be persistent, that they can activate later. What they're really doing is holding our organizational revenue at risk. They're holding at risk the trust that our customers have in our systems and our ability to deliver to our customer base. And ultimately, they're holding at risk our brand. And so kind of take that advanced and evolving threat landscape and add it to what the panels have talked about earlier today, which is, we're expanding the Internet of Things. We're adding sensors to this large infrastructure. We are adding to our traditional IT, we're adding applications. We're moving into the cloud. We're connecting our vendors and our partners and our warehouses and our production lines and our transportation systems into this large infrastructure. And it's all becoming one, what I'll call a mission execution space. It's one large space that we've connected together now to drive revenue and to drive our ability to deliver just-in-time logistics capability, to improve our supply chain efficiencies, to do all those things that are fantastic and drive revenue and allow us to keep our customers happy and provide new capability. But what I think gets forgotten, and this is the resilience piece, is how do those systems all work together? And do we take the time to think about that, to think about how they work together and what those interactions and interfaces and what that connectivity means, and try to put that into context? Not all of our operations are of the same criticality. Not all of our operations contribute directly to revenue. Not all of our operations and our connectivity in that mission execution space contribute directly to what we think of as our brand and how the world sees us. And so we need to, that's really the first step. And that's really one of the key things that we do here at G2 Ops is help our customers really understand and enumerate their architecture. Here's what I have. Here's my systems. Here's how I do tech insertion, how I do tech refresh. When I do that, how I'm connecting my vendors. Here's my cloud infrastructure. Here's my new application information. And we look at how that works together. We develop what we call operational mission threads, which help illuminate how you deliver the services you do for your system. And then we think about how to improve that cybersecurity. So what we call the unified risk management. It's a series of processes and tools that we've wired together to allow an organization to look at its people, its process, and its technology. All three of those attributes together are part of the cybersecurity picture. They all should be addressed, and they all contribute to operational resiliency. And so I'll just kind of leave you with the thought that cybersecurity needs a place at the table because cyber is not a one-size-fits-all solution, whether you're small, medium, large, nonprofit, government organization. You're unique. What you do is unique, and what allows you to do your thing is unique, and it requires attention in that fashion. So our goal is to make you operationally resilient and provide operational cybersecurity measures that have a high return on investment. So thanks for your time. Back to you, Will.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Our next speaker is Daniel Fario with Oero. Daniel is an accomplished business leader in the information security industry. He's the founding CEO of Oero and is currently serves as the president for North America and the chief security officer. He is also a trusted advisor on cybersecurity to governments and large corporations. Daniel holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in computer science with a specialization in artificial intelligence and is a graduate of MIT's Building Global Innovators program. Daniel, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So I would like to start by thanking the previous speaker. Those were very valid comments on how cybersecurity comes last to the table and oftentimes comes to the table as an expense instead of a benefit. And today, my presentation hopefully will help everyone understand how you can actually turn some of those costs into optimizations, not just to the supply chain, but also to the overall security of your employees. So I'm going to start by giving a quick background on Oero. Oero was founded in 2017. I was the founding CEO of the company jointly with a team in Spain. The company has now grown to become a global enterprise with clients pretty much in 4 continents. And some of our clients are well-known brands. We've done supply chain optimization management for companies like GlaxoSmithKline. We do identity management for large insurance companies such as Sura in South America. And recently as well, we've started dabbling into the defense market, where we're now working with Arc Nuclear, which is an American company that has a subsidiary in New Brunswick for small nuclear reactors. And one of our most sort of well-known projects would be CATSA, where the thermal cameras that the government of Canada is using for the COVID-19 response were delivered in partnership with FLIR Systems. Today, I want to walk you on how, with a use case that we've built at Oero that started at a small regional airport in Canada, we were able to roll it out to the 17th largest airports in the country. The idea was simple. How do we enhance the process of areas that are not restricted by PKI regulations and leverage that capability of facial recognition, of blockchain, and all the technologies that have been talked about today to create a business solution that would enable not just employees, but also contractors to have secure access to a particular area of the building. So a good example, and not to be too specific on numbers, but I believe the number of employees that a tier 1 airport and contractors would have per day coming into the facilities, we're talking about 40, 50,000 people. That causes lines, that causes not an easy verification process when we think about the fact that you're now talking about having to issue rate cards, you're having to issue some kind of credential for you to be able to get into the building. So with Oero, what we've been able to do was optimize that complex supply chain by simply taking the physical aspect of it and provide a much safer environment for people to just walk through the door and get into the building. Now, that being said, the same principles and processes can be applied to all aspects of the supply chain. This works for quality assurance, as we have done, for example, for GSK. And the same principle it has also been particularly important when we think about the fact that due to the COVID-19 response, we've now gotten into the thermal camera business, and we've actually have a platform that was able to blend that physical security with thermal screening with the identity management. So really, what we were able to do was creating a solution that not only saved the clients money on the on the whole identity verification and supply chain management, but also we've provided that extra layer of security that provides the C-suite that, you know, warm and fuzzy feeling that now they can rest knowing that they're not exposed to the same level of traditional centralized point of breach that has you know, been one of the key issues of cybersecurity. Let me just check here. Oops, sorry, wrong button. 1 second. Oh, all right. I guess that's it for today. I apologize. My time is up.
Daniel, thank you very much for that presentation. You bring up a lot of great points about this interactivity, especially during a pandemic. So our next speaker today, our final speaker, is Pina Melchiona. Ms. Melchiona is currently the president and CEO of the Canadian Institute of Traffic and Transportation, a learning and development organization offering professional certification in supply chain logistics. Prior to her role at CITT, Ms. Melchiona worked for several national banks and financial institutions and started her career as a lawyer. Ms. Melchiona has a Juris Doctorate Law degree from Osgoode Hall Law School and has a specialized Master's of Business Administration and Financial Services from Dalhousie University. She completed the ICD Rotman Director's Education Program and has been awarded the ICDD designation in 2015. Ms. Melchiona is a member in good standing of both the Ontario and Saskatchewan Bar Associations and holds several board positions, including Director of the Royal Canadian Mint, SGI Insurance Canada, and the Raymond James Trust Company. Pina, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers for including us. I think I come today from a little bit of a different perspective, both the Canadian perspective, but as well as the logistics perspective. So the CITT is Canada's largest logistics association. We represent a number of logistics professionals, thousands of companies across the country, all of the modes of transportation, including everything from warehousing and distribution. And so part of my role here is in the role of an association responsible for getting timely information out to our members. Most of my comments here are based on, it's probably a few years old, but on the digitization of the supply chain in Canada, specifically the role that technology would play, and many of which we've heard here today from our previous speakers. But one of the things that this report specifically calls attention to is the fact that there is a skill gap. So many of our logistics professionals, I would categorize as probably not being early adopters of technology, and therefore that in itself is an enhanced risk when it comes to cybersecurity. Well, and my screen just froze on me, so I'm going to wing this. So many of the things that we've heard about here today are things like blockchain technology, Internet of Things, automated vehicles, automated drones. Those are all things that Canadian companies are adopting quick. I did come from financial services, and I don't think we're unique in the logistics industry to say that technology is having a disruptive effect on the way our businesses operate and work. And we're not alone in that, I don't think. But I will say that I personally look at technology not so much as a disruptor as it is an enabler. And so some of the great things we've heard about here today, things like blockchain and the Internet of Things and AI, are all going to improve the way we do things, but it does come with enhanced risk. And in particular, one of the things that has started to happen in Canada is around the vaccine deployment. So we've had a lot of attention, and in fact, the Canadian Secret Intelligence Services did reach out to the CITT as an association for the voice of logistics professionals and in our role in disseminating information. One of the things that came to the forefront with the rollout of the vaccine, and something that I actually have some slides on to share if I'm not able to get them out on the screen, is that I don't think we necessarily think of national security threats when it comes to cybersecurity. You know, we think of data breaches, we think of malware, ransomware, those types of things. And I don't know that we're necessarily thinking about the national perspective. And one of the things that government has actually been pretty active in partnering with us around is disseminating information about the current national security risk, especially as it pertains to the vaccine rollout, which is top of mind for us in Canada and in other places of the world as we're trying to get injections in arms. And so when we think about cybersecurity and we think about, automated vehicles and how they might be able to be infiltrated for either terrorist or nefarious purposes. When we think about our intellectual property and our processes, our competitive advantage that has the ability to be infiltrated. These are all things that have started to come to the forefront when it comes to cybersecurity. And in Canada in particular, our government is taking a look at a new governance framework for how we look at national security and governance, especially as it pertains to cybersecurity. So I'm bringing a little bit about the Canadian perspective as well as the logistics perspective, but I don't think that we're alone. I think that government's challenge when it comes to national security threats is what is considered classified versus what is considered unclassified information. And how do you disseminate the information to the people who are most at risk? The early days of the pandemic certainly highlighted that in order for a society to function civilly, we need an efficient supply chain to get goods to market. And when there was a delay in that, whether intentional or not, it became apparent that supply chain is fundamental to a civil functioning of society. So I apologize that I had a little bit of IT issues. Speaking about IT, I am happy to share my slides. I do have a lot of important information on the slide, so I'm hoping that the organizers can distribute that. Back to you, Will.
Excellent. Thank you, Pina. And Daniel and Kevin as well, all fantastic presentations. You can all see that our panel has a deep and diverse experience base, both in the cybersecurity sector as it relates to the logistics supply chain as well. In our remaining time, we're going to transition now to a roundtable portion. I have some broader questions that I'd like our guest panelists to answer regarding cybersecurity. And as just a note, when I talk about the supply chain, we're going to talk about the movement of goods, but also the movement of people and passengers. So it's really logistics and supply chain at a higher level. So what I'd like to offer up to the group to answer, kind of the first question is, what does this increase in digital connectivity between the supply chain partners mean from a cybersecurity perspective when you think about all the different technologies we've talked about today?
I'm happy to start. And one of the things that I think about when I think about supply chain is the interconnectivity between people. And so when it does come to cybersecurity, it's not only important for organizations to be confident in their own tools that enhance their cybersecurity or protect against cybersecurity threat, but it really does call into question the need to make sure you are vetting everybody in that supply chain. Because a smaller vendor somewhere in your supply chain may not have the robust capabilities that you have, and that could be a potential data leak or exposure to important and sensitive information. So I would say that when it comes to the supply chain in particular, the interconnectivity of the intermodalism is something that we need to think about, because it's not only due diligence on your own behalf, it's now doing due diligence to everybody in your supply chain. And so the statement that you're only as strong as your weakest link is absolutely true when it comes to cybersecurity.
Excellent.
Yeah, I can build on that. Pina's right on it. I think it's not, I think too often we think about, well, it's my supply chain or their supply chain. It's the supply chain. And with a lot of the clients that we work with, you can draw a digital line all the way from the logic controller that's embedded with a sensor, in a warehouse, directly to a system, say on a float unit, on a ship, on a maritime environment, between the network connectivity and, RF connectivity, it's all connected together. And so an issue in one place is an issue in the other. And, the threat environment is capable enough that they will find a way to exercise that weakest link and then use it to move laterally throughout that system. And so the most important thing is really getting a handle on what is that infrastructure. I've wired these things together because they're important to an efficient supply chain, but what does that really mean? How do they operate together? And what's the posture of that collective system of systems? That's really the critical point.
Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, the current trend is for IoT to continue to develop. And when we think about IoT, we now think about thousands of connected nodes that represent the broadest, most dangerous potential supply chain leak, because you're now talking about defending a large number of nodes instead of focusing on a single point of failure. So I actually think cybersecurity will have and will become more and more important, primarily because, let's just say, even with blockchain, depending on what type of consensus and protocols you're using, you could actually take control over the supply chain if for some reason you don't protect your network and the way the nodes have been laid out accordingly. So it's quite a complex topic, and I do believe that it will be the pain and those unfortunate events that over time will drive people to say, oh, I have to spend some time and energy and resources in my organization to actually figure it out.
Thank you for that. And you know, Pina brought up a great point too earlier about the national security implications. I know here in our port in Norfolk, Virginia, world's largest Navy base, but also you know, second largest port on the East Coast by tonnage. So lots of commercial vessels, lots of government vessels, and cybersecurity probes kind of all the time. So with that in mind, my next question for the panel is, you know, so where's the immediate threat? What is the first vulnerability to address, or where are the gaps?
So I can jump on that one, Will. I think that the immediate threat is, you know, really our infrastructures are living, breathing things. They're constantly changing, they're moving, they're expanding, they're contracting. And so the best answer is it depends. The first thing is to figure out what it is that you have. Are you managing the configuration of those systems? Have you determined your critical flows, your critical threads? And then do the analysis to identify where am I vulnerable? And so from that point, then you can start to answer your question, Will, which is, okay, what is the threat? What's the threat intelligence telling me? You know, what's the business intelligence telling me about how an adversary would operate against my system? And so, again, not one size fits all. The most important thing to me and how I protect my system, processes, services, and revenue is not necessarily the same as Daniel's or Pina's. And so I think that it's a very, very fluid situation right now. And there's really not one thing that I would say is the most important.
I can actually add to that. And I like the way you started your answer, it depends, because that is the typical lawyer answer, and it's my favorite answer. But if I could maybe ask the organizers to share my screen, I think there is a gap because we tend to think about these things in silos. And so we tend to think about cybersecurity in a silo. And when it came specifically to the vaccine rollout and threats against our national security, it really was looking holistically. And so we need to look at not only cybersecurity, we need to look at personnel security. You can have the best systems in the world, and all it takes is one employee who responds to a phishing email, who, you know, inadvertently releases passcodes to expose that entire system. You have to look at the physical security of your operations. You need to look at the entire supply chain integrity. So, you know, my answer is that you have to, there isn't any one immediate. I think you have to be looking holistically at your entire processes and guarding against cybersecurity. I will also say that the briefing that we received from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service was that our traditional thinking about who these foreign bad actors are has really changed. You know, we typically think about diplomats or intelligence officers, and really what it's becoming is, you know, joint ventures, foreign investment funds. It could even be academia, you know, professors or students who aren't even aware that they're a potential target to infiltrate organizations. And then these foreign actors will use their vulnerabilities or weaknesses, a family back home, to be able to secure and get information. So all of this to say is, you know, the threat security is real. Look more holistically. You know, this isn't what we watch on TV in terms of espionage games. It could be a low-level employee who allows, data breaches into your system. And I think you have to look holistically at your entire system when it comes to integrity.
Yeah, to add to that, I would say that the biggest cyber threat, and this goes in line with what you guys have said. I guess it's adding on just with the name what it is. So social engineering is really one of the largest threats to organizations. I think from a technology perspective, we figured it out for the most part, knock on wood, how to, make a decent firewall, how to create a DDoS system to prevent DDoS. Like we've pretty much covered the majority of threats. So now we spend a lot of our time trying to build better algorithms that will, have less false positives or things like that. Yet the most simple and basic thing is the human element, being able to manipulate the system and exploit it from the inside. That being said, I think the most immediate threat to cybersecurity is actually the lack of education that we are providing in our school system, and the fact that it's not even a subject, even though you're taking people and graduating them out of high school without even knowing what cybersecurity is. So I think education is really the only way to create that first line of defense against cyber threats.
Daniel, I think that's a great segue. You must have read my mind, because my next question was going to talk about where we are as a workforce. And is the workforce prepared for basically where we are now with emerging technology and cybersecurity, let alone the future? So how's our workforce looking, and what are we doing to address it?
I can certainly start. And I would say from the Canadian perspective and from the logistics perspective, I would say that this is not an industry that are early adopters. The logistics professional is not an IT expert. And so there is a skills gap. And one of the things that, we work towards, especially with our organization, is closing that skill gap. What kind of information do you need around, blockchain, AI, and making sure that people in your logistics part of your business understand the IT part of the business. So I would say, speaking purely from my perspective, no, there is a skill gap here, and we need to pay particular attention to it for all of the reasons we've talked about here today.
And I think there's a lack of awareness between the fluidity between what we kind of consider our personal life and our professional life. In the work we've done with, small through large, very large organizations, we see very similar, what I'll call kind of cyber hygiene deficiencies, where an employee will use the same password for their Microsoft Teams or Office 365 environment that they use for Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or their bank, and that prevents those, when their Facebook password is compromised, that means that their professional environment is also compromised, because that's how the threat works. So I think there's a little bit of a misnomer there in how a digital threat actor operates. They always start with the most basic set of compromises, and they work their way up. If they never have to move beyond the basic exploit, they don't, and they won't. And so if they can take a password off the dark web and apply it to your professional database management system, to your cloud environment, to your Office 365 environment, they will do that. And once they're in, they're in. And then if they need to, they will ramp up capability to move laterally. And so that, kind of basic cyber hygiene is a huge problem, both in our professional lives and our personal lives, and they are absolutely connected together.
I like to think there's a balance between how you apply cyber and you don't make your workforce miserable. I think passwordless solutions are the future, just because CEOs will make a decision. Okay, we're going to improve our cybersecurity stack, and then the message gets pushed out, and suddenly the staff asks, okay, so you're telling me that I have to log into my computer 5 times a day, and I need to go to Google Authenticator 5 times a day. You will probably get some resistance. And when I say probably, is you will definitely get some resistance. And when you get into 2FAs and MFAs, then suddenly people start hating you. So I think the breaking those barriers of entry and the user experience for the workforce to adopt some of those extra measures, combined with education, will definitely solve the problem. But like everything in every industry, there's a path that we need to continue and carry on. And I think we're positioned now better than we ever were to have a successful cybersecurity strategy being implemented across at least the largest organizations in North America.
And Will, can I just quickly just follow up on that?
Sure.
The education piece is fundamental, because some of the research that I have seen is, people of my generation, without aging myself, we are more hesitant and concerned about data and privacy than perhaps the millennials are. They were born with technology. It's fluid for them. They choose seamless ease of use over things like data protection or privacy protection. And so this is where I think the educational piece needs to come in, the awareness around why cybersecurity is important to enhance. So I just wanted to make sure, because there is a generational divide between how we look at technology and how we use it, and perhaps one generation using prudence, another generation may completely think that that is an over-exaggeration of the protection you need to take.
Excellent. So a quick follow-up for the panel, especially Daniel had mentioned on not making your workforce miserable. So has the pandemic really increased these potential attack vectors due to remote working? And really, is there a sweet spot between productivity and security? As you mentioned, do you want your employees spending the whole time authenticating their logins, or do you want them working? Where's that sweet spot?
Well, the pandemic has been the greatest accelerator of digital transformation in the history of computer science. So we have seen traffic like we've never seen before. And you looked at companies that literally were booming through this pandemic, Zoom, and even the one we're using here today, StreamYard. There's so many of them now that I can't even keep tabs on them anymore. But at the end of the day, the security in a situation like this is still catching up. It's only been a year. A lot of companies got caught off guard, and they had to move quickly. And moving quickly in a large organization usually is a multi-year process. So that being said, I think that the market is evolving with some of these solutions. Employees over the next few, potentially 2 years, are going to experience significant changes on the way they work and authenticate themselves within an organization. Digital identity as a space has had tremendous evolution, and I would give credit to some organizations, both in the US and Canada. In Canada, DIAC has been fundamental in bringing people together, and the fact is now those vectors that we need to follow on what protection should look like are going to be different, but I think most companies will adjust to it and they will just be fine. That's my 2 cents.
Excellent. Pina or Kevin, you got a 30-second answer for that?
I'm going to say absolutely. I echo Daniel's comments. This has been the greatest accelerator. And I don't think that we're ever going to go back to pre-pandemic days. There is going to be a new normal. Technology is going to be part of that new normal. Remote working is going to be part of that new normal. And so how do you maintain the same kind of vigor that you would ordinarily use in the office and apply that to your home setting to make sure that enhanced cybersecurity measures are in place and it's seamless? So short answer is absolutely yes. The vaccine and the pandemic has certainly changed the way we're going to work going forward.
Yeah, and I'd absolutely right, and I would, kind of say that, for all the people listening, make sure that cyber has a seat at the decision table. You talk about IT modernization, you talk about expansion, you talk about digital transformation. Cybersecurity needs to be a part of that conversation because it's an enabler to those things. Not a road bump on the way to doing those things. To do those things effectively and to do them for the long term, to truly enable, this transformation, cyber has to be there and it has to be built in from the beginning. During this time that businesses have been making this this adjustment, we've also seen ransomware numbers go through the roof. We've seen the threat community really evolve as well. So they're evolving in parallel. They're changing their operations. They're always a step ahead. And so making sure cyber has a seat at the table, making sure the resources required to do things properly are included, and then making sure there's a sustainment tail. That's the big thing. If you make an investment today, make sure you're prepared to make that investment or to modernize that investment for the next 3 to 5 years. I think that's really the key to kind of a resilient, sustainable transition.
Excellent. So here's my final lightning round question for each of the panelists in 15 seconds or less. You mentioned the new normal. In the new normal, looking ahead 5 years, what is the next big tech application that we need to secure?
For me, there isn't one big one. It is all of the ones that we've listed here today: blockchain, AI, IoT, automation, and robotics. They are all going to be leading the forefront when it comes to what the new normal looks like 5 years from now, in my humble opinion. And I'm not an IT expert. I just sort of look at the research from a logistics perspective, and those are all at the forefront of technological change.
Daniel, 15 seconds.
Yeah, I would say IoT and blockchain are definitely at the forefront of what's coming. And I would still say it's hard because you have to think at cybersecurity and all the as-a-service SaaS cloud platforms that are coming. So it will definitely be cloud security applied to those to those other technologies that Pina already mentioned.
Yeah, and I would just close by saying that unique to this environment, to the logistics, transportation, maritime environment, it's the addition of IoT and OT. So logic controllers, SCADA devices, single board computers, they use technology, software, firmware, operating systems, network protocols that are unique and that have a very, very low awareness and knowledge level within our IT, administrative community. And so we need to ramp up our ability to understand them and then understand what the secure configuration of those devices looks like.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank my guest panelists here. It's been a fantastic time working with you all, Pina, Daniel, and Kevin. For all our attendees here, please check out their websites. These companies are doing fantastic things in North America and abroad. So make sure that you spend some time doing that as well. I also want to thank Chango Tech for putting on this event, really giving us this opportunity as a supply chain and logistics industry to come together and talk through these different tech applications. And finally, I would give a very quick shout out to what appears our most active commenter, Johnny Walker. So Johnny Walker, congrats to you for most comments.